Hello, Vector Podcast is here. We again continuing to roll in this season 2 of this podcast, and today I have a very interesting guest, Yaniv Vaknin, who is the director of product at Searchium. If you've read my blog post on not all vector databases are made equal, one of the vector databases or like technologies stood out. And it's a technology made by a GSI technology company. And it's implementing a hardware for vector search. It's very rare that this thing exists or this approach exists on the market today. And I'm super excited to talk to Yaniv. How are you, Yaniv? Hey.
Great. Thanks for having me, Dimitri.
Yeah, I'm really glad you joined and found time in your busy schedule. So can you first explain how Searchium and GSI are related? And maybe at the same time, if you could traditionally introduce yourself and talk about your background and how you got here.
Yeah. So maybe I will start with a quick introduction. So I'm director of product at Searchium AI. Searchium AI is a SaaS platform for ML search application based on purpose-built AI chip for search applications. Prior to this role, I've worked at AWS as a machine learning specialist, where I've worked with a broad spectrum of top-tier tech companies, trying to help them in their machine learning domain. And I was super excited from the revolution of like the fifth revolution, the AI revolution, with cool stuff of NLP, search, unstructured data, structured data. I've worked with various companies, cyber, fintech, e-commerce, etc. I was a co-founder and CEO of DeepSea AI, which was the first computer vision-based system for open water drowning detection. So we are the SaaS solution of GSI. GSI acquired an Israeli startup a few years ago. The founder is Dr. Avidan Akrib, which is one of the smartest guys that I ever met. And during his PhD, he invented a new concept. So traditionally, CPU is communicating with the memory, and then you have like challenges of bottleneck, I/O, etc. But when he built the new concept, he built a memory that is the processor. So all of the computation is happening inside the memory. You can guess that when you are running heavy or intensive memory applications, if all of the processing is happening inside the memory, you can get a single-digit millisecond latency. So GSI acquired the Israeli startup, and we are based in Israel. We have an R&D team of approximately 40 to 50 people. In order to scale it, we started Searchium AI because, it's super hard to scale hardware. So today we are offering this unique hardware on the cloud. Can be AWS, GCP, or any other cloud. And customers can consume it as a SaaS platform.
Yeah, makes sense. So, but there is still an option to, if I want to have a completely on-premise sort of like setup, right? In principle, I could have bought like the APU cards, APU being Associative Processing Unit cards, and like install them similar to what I would do with GPU. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so there are two types of implementation. The first one is on-prem, and the second is via the cloud. There are various configurations, and in terms of if, for instance, customers that would like to consume it as an on-prem solution, there are various capabilities, and one of the major things about this hardware accelerator is the power consumption. So comparing it to CPU or GPU, it is like can be 5% or 10% of the power consumption. So companies that are running heavy workloads of GPU and CPU, the total cost of ownership for them is the power consumption and other factors. So on-prem customers can reduce the infrastructure cost in terms of the total cost of ownership, power consumption, etc.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I think it's not very frequently that we mention power consumption as one of the dimensions on this podcast. I mean, I think it's crucial, of course, for the planet, but also for the electricity bill. Nowadays, electricity cost is skyrocketing, and I think it's quite important. Yeah. And
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just kind of alluding to this fact that it's very like you should not skip it in kind of assessing a system or like a vector search solution, right? Not only focusing entirely on the offering itself, like you should still worry about how it will scale in different dimensions. I'm glad you guys also worry about the power consumption part.
Yeah, low carbon footprint is a major issue right now, and especially in Europe. Usually developers, when they are launching the AWS instances, so they choose by parameters of virtual CPU, RAM, etc., and they are not aware of the carbon footprint. But when you are running it on-prem, this is a major parameters, and this is a key parameter to taking a decision what is the right platform or what is the right hardware for you. Yeah, so totally agree. But I believe and I agree with you. We should take it into consideration, and I assume for cloud providers to integrate cloud providers like AWS, GCP, Azure. This can be critical for them, and we are in conversation with some of the companies of some of the cloud providers that I mentioned.
Yeah, this sounds great. If we move a little bit closer to the algorithm side, so this is a kind of like dedicated hardware, and as far as I understood, also based on our Berlin Buzzwords presentation, this hardware can support not only vector search, but some other scenarios, right? Like for image processing related tasks. So is there any kind of like constraint on what type of vector search algorithm you can implement, or it doesn't have any constraint?
Yeah. So I think that the biggest challenge today is when you're developing hardware, you can develop like a state-of-the-art hardware, but I think the major challenge is how do you integrate it with the community. NVIDIA have done it very good with CUDA, and it should be part of the ecosystem. So in terms of applications, yeah, we have like another application for image processing. It is based on satellite images and radar images, and we can process it like faster in a few orders of magnitude comparing to NVIDIA GPU. We have in the past we had a few other applications for genome and moleculars, and today would like to to focus on the biggest challenges. Like I believe that search is, and we can elaborate about it later on. Search is still broken, and this is a huge market, and so our focus right now is on the search. We would like to expand it to other solutions as well, like image processing, and we already have a solution and a customer for this solution. And one of our efforts is to build an ecosystem around this. So hopefully soon we will launch our Python compiler. So developers can write their code on Python and then run it seamlessly on our APU without trying to learn a new framework or a new language. So this is another direction that we are working. We are trying, I think one of the biggest challenges today is to simplifying the technological stack for developers. So they are working with the common frameworks or languages. They don't want to learn. Usually, they would like to stay with the languages that they are familiar, and the learning curve is not always. They don't always have time for to learn a new framework. So we are trying to simplify the integration with their current stack. One of our solution is a plugin on top of Elastic and OpenSearch, and which they are offering a vector search today, and we can talk about it. But so we have a plugin on top of these search applications, because some of the customers would like to stay with their current Elastic or OpenSearch. So we have built a plugin on top of it, and we are talking with search engines and vector database in order to implement our solution with their solution. I think in terms of like the landscape, so we are not perceived vector search engines and vector databases as competitors. My perception is that they are they are partners and better together, and to give a greater value for their customers, reducing the infrastructure cost and give a lower latency with the same without sacrificing accuracy. So yeah, we are trying to be part of the ecosystem, and to help them and to help customers scale and improve their search applications.
Yeah, this is interesting. You touched on you not being like a competitor to vector databases. I think it's interesting topic in general, because on one hand, if you take all vector database players, they kind of like look at each other as competitors probably, but at the same time, as all of you players are sharing the approach, the documentation, the how you think about yourself, I think it also helps cumulatively to the whole market. But I also wanted to drill in a bit into this Elasticsearch and OpenSearch plugin. So essentially, like what Elasticsearch team has been doing recently, and I think they released now some updates in version 8.5, where you can do things like hybrid search, right? But this is all based on the ANN implementation on top of Lucene. So it's all inside Java. So it kind of runs in the same JVM, right? The approach that you guys have implemented, it's basically like a vector search backend, right? Which kind of runs somewhere else. Let's say if we're using the cloud offering. But at the same time, it feels like a sort of like native to Elasticsearch. So I don't need to do much, right? I just need to install the plugin. Of course, I need to have credentials. And what I wanted to say is that it feels like you expand the capabilities of Elasticsearch beyond what it offers, in a way that you can actually remove the load of vector search away from it to another backend, right? Can you talk a bit more on the unit cost, on this kind of unit economy and sort of advantages of the approach that you have implemented?
Yeah, this is a great point actually. So we are trying to decouple storage and compute. So let's take, for instance, a customer with Elastic or OpenSearch, and they are having like tens of clusters, and they would like to scale it and to optimize it. So we are running on top of Elastic, and our solution is kind of the compute for Elastic. So they can run and scale and reduce the infrastructure cost, because all of this is a question of how many machines do you run. Okay, so you can get like 99.9 recall at 10 or accuracy, and you can get like single-digit millisecond latency. But in terms of the infrastructure cost, so one of the biggest challenges today for enterprises is the low margins due to heavy infrastructure applications. So if you are running GPU on the cloud, or like heavy machines with big machines with high memory, it's great in terms of the business, because it's great in terms of the dev team, in terms of we are getting great performance, high recall. But again, when you're moving and you're discussing on the business side, so in terms of the margins and the profit of the companies, and today it's a big issue, you know, with companies that are having the challenge of being profitable. So we are trying, and we had like a few benchmarks. We are trying to reduce the infrastructure cost. So instead of 10 machines, it can be 2 machines and our accelerator, our APU. And with that, you can, you know, scale it. And, you know, one other interesting thing is like many companies are talking about the scale challenge, about the 1 billion scale challenge. So, and, you know, data is exploding, right? Because, you know, today there are 80 zettabytes, and 10 years ago, it was like 16. So essentially, like, data is growing very fast, and I assume that in the next couple of years, it will grow exponentially. And 90% of this data, the data that is created every year, is unstructured. So, you know, this is the cliche of finding a needle in a haystack. So in terms of, and I assume more and more companies will face the scale challenge, like above 1 billion. And I know that this is a challenge for some of the search engine companies, you know, scaling to hundreds of millions and billions. And I had a conversation with one of the biggest e-commerce in Asia, and he told me, yeah, our challenge is to scale. They have like 2 billion index, and again, the infrastructure cost is a major issue. I've read a post by Amazon's CFO, and like a week ago, and their focus right now is reducing the infrastructure cost for their customers. And any solution that can reduce the infrastructure cost for enterprises, I think it's a major issue for not only R&D teams, but business and decision makers in enterprises.
Yeah, well, I will pull for that link so we can also include it in the show notes. Some of our listeners, by the way, find it quite educational to have all these additional links and study materials, and I think we can also include that. That's super cool. So in a way, like, your challenge is that you basically need to, as you said, there are low margins, right? For these bigger players, everyone tries to stay profitable. So in a way, your challenge is to not only fit into that narrow kind of window, but also be profitable yourself, right? So like you like provide that acceleration. What do you think, where do you stand today on that? Do you think there is a lot still to do, or do you think it's already something that companies can try?
Yeah. So today we have like the first generation of our AI chip, the APU. The potential of improving the hardware and our bill of material of our hardware, and generally speaking, next year we will launch our second generation. So for instance, if today we can, you know, in terms of performance, we are talking about single or double digit millisecond latency with one APU, next year we will launch our second generation. It will be more than 10x faster. So I think we are just scratching the tip of the iceberg. So I think that the hardware challenge is solved, but you know, every week we have like a new implementation and improving our performance on the software layer. So we have a few layers. We have the hardware layer. So I spoke about it, like the first generation and the second generation. I believe that there's a huge potential in terms of optimizing our software layer, because we are trying to reinvent search. So I think there's a huge potential on the hardware side, but I think we are just we didn't even start to optimize our software performance. Recently, we found a new implementation to improve the latency by reduce the latency by 40%, like it was 2 weeks ago. So hopefully, we will launch it to production in the upcoming in the next upcoming weeks. So, and in terms of your question, yeah, I think we are just at the beginning. I believe that we can optimize both on the hardware and the software layer, and hopefully it will be very profitable.
Yeah, sounds great. I mean, in general, it was, since I have had exposure to it as we implemented the image search demo. It was quite interesting how, how easy it was to set it up, right? So it like, and you don't need to worry about that hardware thing. Yeah, it acts a little bit like a black box, but on the other hand, it's very scalable. So and you guys also have, I will make sure to link this, you also published the is it called neural hashing algorithm, right? Which you use, one of the algorithms that you have implemented. It would also be cool to drill into that direction. But I mean, in general, it was fairly straightforward how, how we upload the data, how it gets indexed, and then how we can query. I was just thinking to take it a little bit deeper. Can you talk to some of the features? Many of the vector database players, they say, why do you need vector databases? Because first of all, if you took FIS, for example, or a similar framework, you wouldn't have the filter support, right? And of course, in real application like search app, you do need filters alongside the whatever retriever you implement, right? Keyword or vector. So can you talk a bit more about features and maybe also touch on the algorithms that you guys have implemented?
Yeah. So there are various types of features and implementations. We are working with the common algorithms. It can be either flat search for applications, like it can be face recognition, where you need to search every record. We have implementations of ANN, IVF, and a new implementation of HNSW on our APU. Pre-filter and other features. One of the areas that we would like to focus is, as you mentioned, is to simplify. So we can, you can work with it as a black box and install the plugin and work with your technological stack and with your search application, either Elastic, OpenSearch, or a vector search engine or vector database. Pre-filter, as you mentioned, is supported, and I think that we should focus on simplifying. This is our biggest challenge: simplifying the work with our platform and creating more integrations and more connectors, not on the feature level, but in terms of working with the ecosystem. This is our main focus right now, and again, improving the performance, because we are customer obsessed, and we would like our customers to get the lowest infrastructure cost without sacrificing latency and and the accuracy, recall.
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially like to do this at scale, right? I know that some of the players, they say that it's very rare that there are clients with more than few dozens of millions of items, right? But today you already mentioned that there are clients which have, more than a billion items, maybe more than 2 billion items. So do you think that going forward, you will see more of this second, type of players with more data? Or do you think that there is still a use for dedicated hardware for this kind of smaller scale players?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that in terms of the scale challenge, we are working with customers, and some of them, yeah, as you mentioned, like tens of millions. But moving forward, I think most of the enterprises and big companies will move forward, and they will scale to 1 billion, 10 billion, and maybe even more. In terms of like the ecosystem, so my 2 cents is that companies are still in the concept of keyword search. For some applications, TF-IDF, BM25. For some application, it's a good solution, and you don't need an hammer for a screwdriver problem, right? So for some use cases, keyword search is a good fit, and this is part of the concept of hybrid search. So I think we're at the beginning of the vector search, if I may call it, the vector search revolution, when where you can have the X2Vec concept, like any unstructured data. We are talking about text, but there are broad areas that we could develop some cool stuff for, as I mentioned, genome, audio, video search. We have a notebook with in our website notebook with video search, and again there's a broad spectrum of applications that companies can develop some cool stuff, and we are excited to see brilliant ideas and startups that are developing applications on top of these vector search applications.
Yeah, you touched on that topic, by the way, which I also spoke to some extent on the Haystack conference in Berlin, where I gave a keynote. I'll also make sure to give the link. Doug Turnbull said that let's stop calling it vector search, because and I don't know how I really interested to hear your thoughts on that, because in principle, you and I, being product managers, like if we think about some problem to solve, right? Let's say we want to introduce, I don't know, question answering component in our search engines. It's not like we would probably, if we didn't know that, we probably wouldn't say, oh, I know how to solve it, it's vector search. And so instead he was saying, let's call it relevance application, right? Or relevance oriented application. What's your broad take on this? You touched on this as well, like people are not yet aware of this revolution. It's probably already happening, but people don't know what to do with it, right? And I just yesterday saw a tweet from one user saying, can you actually explain what can I do with it, right? So do you think that the world is still, let's say the world of software development is still awakening to this new field?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with you. Essentially, when I'm talking with developers and I'm saying we are working on vector search, they are like asking vector what? And I think that most of the developers, and this is one of our challenges, is to democratize AI and machine learning. So in terms of technology, my perspective is that technology is an enabler. If the best solution is vector search, great. It can, outperform on various applications, but the technology on a product perspective, so you are trying to create value. I think that the first lesson of product is to create value for your customer. That's it. Simple as that. And what is the technology and what is under the hood and what is inside the black box, it really doesn't matter. And so in terms of technology, yeah, there's, and we are like, it's a crazy time for developers in terms of the AI machine learning revolution. Stable diffusion, generative AI, and I've heard about that they are going, OpenAI planning to launch the new GPT-4, and the pace of innovation is totally crazy. So, and it's really hard to keep it simple, to simplify it when people are asking you, there's the grandmother test for startup. Say it in plain English. Explain your idea in a plain English. And it's super challenging, to simplify it. So when developers or companies asking what is vector search, I'm using the example of transforming words in the case of text to numbers. It's easy for us to compare numbers, right? We know that 3 is close or is similar to 4, right? But what is the connection between king and queen? Okay, so how do you represent it as a number? So if you are trying, and again, I'm trying to super simplify it, if you are trying to build an equation, what is the connection between king and queen? So you can say king plus man minus woman equals to queen. So you are trying to represent it as numbers. So this is the concept of vector. You are representing unstructured data, and it can be with image embeddings, etc. And then I think most of the tech companies today, their core technology is search. Okay, let's take, if you are looking for a movie, it's Netflix. If you would like to hear something cool, or your podcast, so you are running a query on Spotify, Vector Podcast, and you will get Dimitri's podcast. You would like to buy a dress, and you are trying to do it very simple. You don't usually more of the, let's take for instance e-commerce, right? So most of the consumers don't have the time and the patience to run SQL queries, filter this, filter that. They would like to write it in a simple English or in a different language. Okay, yeah, so let's take for an example a girl in Asia. She would like to purchase a red and white short sleeve dress. Up until the vector search revolution, she didn't have the option to do it. So usually she will get like a similar result. It will not always be red and white with short sleeve dress. And what about the challenge of the language? Okay, so if her English is not so great and she would like to purchase something on Amazon, eBay, or any other e-commerce. So the challenge of language. So essentially, vector search is breaking the barrier of the language and the barrier of understanding what is your question, or what is your query. So I think that in terms of, and there's a broad discussion about it, democratizing AI. What is the added value of AI? So, you have like autonomous cars, and this is great, but, breaking barriers, the language barrier with the multilingual model and some other cool stuff. This is I think something that is doing really good for the ecosystem and for consumer and the people that they have like a barrier of a language. So this is a great example. What is the added value of vector search?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all of the examples that you brought up, if you look at how you would tackle, I don't know, like red short sleeve dress with a more traditional approach, I guess you will need to build some kind of query understanding system. But even then, like, even if after you've built it, let's say you will run filters on your data, right? But that also means you do need to have the filters. But if you don't have them, if you don't have the values in those fields in your documents, right? So what if you only have like, and this is, by the way, not very unusual. Like I used to oversee a project in e-commerce space where we would get data from new providers all the time, right? So one of the issues was to map them back to our ontology, but at the same time they would miss a lot of like field values, right? So what would you put there? So they give you some description, and then they give you the image or a set of images. So like with conventional, not conventional, but like more traditional approach of search, right? Keyword search, you're kind of like stuck, right? What would you do there? And I guess of course people do solve it in some way, but instead you could just apply vector search, right? And even though I say just, there is still some challenge, for example, with model fine tuning and things like that. Can you talk a bit more to this? Maybe new challenges that this field opens. Of course, it gives us opportunities, it gives us advantages, it solves some, painstaking issues that we had before. But what do we need to focus on going forward then once we deploy such systems beyond only hardware part, but also like on this algorithm side?
Yeah. This is a great question because it resonates with one of your blog posts, recent blog post where you published Google's research about e-commerce companies in the US losing $300 billion due to search abandonment in the US only. And again, this is crazy number because if you have like I would like to buy a green polo shirt and I really want to buy a green polo shirt, and the e-commerce got this green polo shirt inside in their warehouse or in the inventory, and they can't find the match. We can't find the match for this challenge. This is a huge challenge, but in terms of and again, this is just one example, but our mission is to break this barrier for developers. It's not only e-commerce, so expanding it to searching logs. Okay, if you would like to find an anomaly or you would like to understand what is the root cause when you have like software system logs, and you would like to understand and to find some anomalies, or even fintech, e-commerce, and other areas. I think that there's some cool stuff over there. So one way to move forward is if you would like to use, let's take for instance Siri. I would like to buy with your audio, right? I would like to buy a red and white short sleeve dress below $100. Okay, so you can. This is a simple thing for consumers, but technology wise, this is a huge challenge. So the first challenge is to convert the audio to text. And today there's you can convert it directly to vectors, and then you can run this query. But again, you need to filter, because if you want something that is below 100, so usually it's the price field. So I think this is the biggest challenge, that consumers or people can communicate in a natural way with the computer, with audio, and say it very simple without trying to run complicated SQL queries, etc. So I think this is the holy grail of machine learning, to process this query and give you the example. And when you would like to purchase it on a certain website, it will give you the place order page, and you will get all of the details. You will see the type of the dress, and it will give you the right result, and it will be below $100. And I think this is the way, or this is the direction that we can move forward with this technology.
Yeah, that sounds great. So in principle, so that our listeners, the present and new one, will understand, is that vector search really opens doors to new types of data, right? New modalities, as they say. So like previously it was maybe only text modality. Even if you saw pictures on the monitor or on your phone, as a response to your query. It doesn't necessarily mean that that query really was kind of grasping the best parts of that image, like it would actually understand what is in the image. But with vector search, you can also implement that, and for example, using clip model or some other model where you can really infer meaning from that picture, right? And what you are saying is that in the future, and maybe this is to some extent happening already, is that we can also cross modalities between voice and text, right? So like what I'm saying, it can represent as a vector, and then find an image or find a video, right? It's like a lot of applications.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. And if you are working with your Instagram and you found like a nice celeb that is wearing a nice dress and you would like to buy something that is similar, so with image search you can find like a similar find me this dress, or the most relevant dress to, or the closest dress, the closest example of this dress. And yeah, there are various options. This is just one example, of how to monetize Instagram or TikTok, where consumers can watch their favorite celeb that they are following, and if they were seeing something, this is great, so I want to purchase it. And in terms of monetization, and in terms of the added value of the customer, take these platforms as an e-commerce platform. Okay, this is like a fresh concept, but this is a way for companies to monetize the platform. It's not a social media, it can be e-commerce, and it can be super simple, because up until now they've seen like a nice dress or a nice shirt, but they cannot do with it, they cannot purchase it, they don't know how to explain to the machine or to the computer what is the type of the clothing that they would like to buy. So yeah, there are various options, and yeah, I'm eager to see what are the applications that developers and entrepreneurs will develop with this technology.
Yeah, that sounds great. One of the apps that you just kind of reminded me of is, I think it was James Briggs who built the kind of simple demo using the recent model called Whisper from OpenAI. So you can actually, like on YouTube today, how you find things is basically mostly based on titles, I believe. This is what people type. But then he built a demo where he can land in a precise time code, which contains the answer to your question. That could be really interesting. Like it just to think about it, it unlocks even more. What you said in the beginning, like we have this zettabytes of data and so on, but like we are not able to unlock the data, right? It's just sitting there, waiting to be discovered, so to say. Yeah, it's really cool. I wanted to spend a bit of time on the search topic itself. So you did mention this search abandonment issue, which is like an e-commerce, but in general, if we think about search field on a much larger scale, and I think Daniel Tankelang also said about it that when search engine doesn't work, you are blamed. But when it does work, you don't hear anything. It's like people take it for granted. It's kind of like water from the tap, I guess, right? If it's the right analogy. So what do you think of the search field in general? Like, where do you think vector search field fits in? And what's the role of this hybrid approach where you have these keywords versus which are more familiar to users versus vector search? So where would you take this yourself, right? As a product manager having unlimited resources, where would you go?
Yeah. This is an interesting question. Yeah, so I think that search is still an unsolved problem, and in order to find the right object or the right, the most accurate type of data. We are still, we have a lot of work to develop this ecosystem and, to build multimodals and multilingual. And I think that the big tech companies are doing some great job with this stuff, like OpenAI and the other folks. Hybrid search is a very interesting concept. I believe that for some applications it can be a good way to solve their challenges. But I think that the one of the most important pillar is that you should, and again, I've learned it at AWS that there are like the concept of moving backward from the customer. What is, I don't have solution. If we have a discussion with a customer, we are asking what is the problem that he would like to solve. And this is like, you should be focused, what is the problem that you would like to solve, like more than 50% of your discussion. And if you don't have a good fit, it's not a good fit. If the vector search technology is not a good fit, we will say it to the customer. We are not trying, to fit into a space that, keyword search is a great solution. So I think the focus should be around the problem space. So trying to figure out what is their pain point or what is their customer's pain point. Is it the accuracy for some applications? We spoke with a fraud detection company, and for their use case, like keyword search was a good enough solution. Great, so go ahead, and we don't want to disturb you. So I think the focus should be around the problem and the challenge, and then again, focus on what is the challenge that they would like to achieve, or what is the potential of the solution. Sometimes we are talking about recall. Is it the most important parameter for some of the customers? 90% is good enough for their use case, but for mission critical, it should be mission critical applications. Sorry. It should be 99.99%, right? So I think it's a matter, to some extent, it's an issue of what is the problem and what is the KPI that you would like to achieve. Would you like to optimize the recall? Great, we would optimize it. If you would like to reduce the infrastructure cost with the same KPI, you have a recall of X and you have a latency of X, and it's a good enough. And maybe it can be latency. So for instance, Amazon published a research that every 100 millisecond latency equals to 1% of the revenue. So if the revenue is $1 billion, then 100 millisecond of latency equals to 10 million. This is a huge impact for companies. So I think the main question is, what is the problem that you would like to solve? What is the pain point? And starting from the customer, and then work backwards to find if you have like a good solution, and if your solution is a good fit. And again, there are various concepts. Keyword search is a great solution. Vector search is a great solution. And hybrid search is a good solution. I think the biggest question is, what is the problem that the customer would like to solve?
Yeah, I think you put it really brilliantly, because it's very easy to get in the minutia of tweaking things, like on the software side, and saying, I have the best algorithm, right? Or I have the fastest, or whatever. But then if you forget that, I guess the most important dimension for your customer, maybe it's power consumption that we mentioned previously, or something else, right? But also what you said, how you can think like the way Amazon did it, right? That they think big, right? They say, okay, of all these dollars we earned, how much actually we wasted on latency, and also how much of clients we kind of lost, right? Or potential clients, because if the server doesn't respond soon enough, then and it's only average, right? 100 millisecond. Maybe for some it looks like more like closer to a second, including their own internet connection. And they might just give up and say, this is not working today. I will go and check something else. I will forget about what I wanted to buy. So, right. Yeah, this is very interesting. Also, like you brought up some topic behind the scenes, like on the role of human in this whole loop. I also want to pick your brain on that. There is one direction in AI saying this is gonna be a whole automatic thing. You don't need to do anything. It will decide for you, which is also, by the way, a little bit worrisome if the AI is going to decide for everything. But even going back to Earth, like, where do you see humans will play a role? In some sense, we are slower, right, than machines. In some sense, I think we're still faster, for example, in creating things. But even there, the machines are tapping into it. But like connected with MLOps topics, also machine learning operations, and connected with bias in data that we collect to train models, or maybe some other dimension that I'm missing that you think human is going to play a role. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. So actually, I wrote about it in Medium about the MLOps challenge and the human in the loop, and what is the place of human in the loop. Essentially, I believe that machine learning is a decision support system. Okay, I believe that the human has a huge or important, significant role in helping the machine to decide. And a good way to automate processes is to use the machine and to set a threshold. Okay, so for instance, if you were talking about cyber security challenge, so you can decide that the threshold is below 0.7 is good enough, and you don't that like the SOC teams will check this anomaly, and then again you are reducing the manpower cost because you are automating, and you are sending queries or a stream of data to analysts that they would fine tune the model, and then you can create a learning model, right? So it's a human in the loop. The human is giving a feedback to the model, and then you can detect data drift. If it's not automated, there are solutions that are good at data drift, etc. But again, my 2 cents is that fully automated systems, we are not ready yet for it. And I believe that in order, and then again, we don't like all of the anomalies will be tested by a human, again, because you have the false positive fatigue or alert fatigue in the cyber domain. So I believe that a combination or the hybrid model where you can define a certain threshold and send it to a human to run a sanity check. And I've worked with many data scientists, and they always like to improve the state-of-the-art model and improve the F1 score for from 99 to 99.9. But what is the impact on the business? Is it important enough for the business to invest resources in this research or not? Like 5 data scientists are running and testing and optimizing the hyperparameter for months, but what is the business? What is the impact on the business? So essentially, I believe that, and again, it resonates with the search domain. So I believe that companies that will be smart enough to integrate the human in the loop mechanism, where they can find, measure KPIs like the clicks on the first result, how many clicks on the first result, or any other KPIs, and then if it's a good model, then great, we should keep it. If it's not broken, don't touch it. But if something is not working, the mechanism or something, that there's a drift in the data, so we can research it again and find what is the root cause, and then human will detect it or machine will detect it. So I believe that this is a question of layers. So you have like the machine learning layer, and then MLOps tools like you can, AutoML and hyperparameter optimization and data drift and model drift and other tools. But I don't think we are ready yet to fully automate all of the process. And yeah, this is like a great question. For instance, autonomous cars, are we ready yet or not? I think this is the challenge of the data science ecosystem in the next years.
Yeah, I think it's also like our psychological readiness to accept these solutions, right? So maybe previously, when we didn't have, let's say, elevators, everyone was walking up the stairs and no one really complained. But then when the first elevator arrived, maybe people were like really, looking at it with open eyes and like, what is this? Should I trust it? Will I get entrapped in it or something, So the same, I think, goes to what you just raised as the self-driving cars. I think it was Elon Musk saying, I don't remember exactly the stats, but something, let's say 1 in 1,000, so it avoids basically 999 bad cases. So would you trust that, or do you need like it to be even bigger number and so on and so forth? So like complete 1,000, so it's never mistaken. But what about cases where it's hard to decide, right? Like you inevitably going to crash the car. Now you need to choose where, like to the human, or maybe to the, I don't know, to the tree or something, which hurts the driver and stuff like that, right? So this I think the same decisions that we would be making as humans, then algorithms should make. And I think what humans or humanity has hard time with is probably accepting the fact that someone else is going to make the decision. Right? So I think
it's a revolution. You mentioned the elevator, but the famous story of Henry Ford with the horses and the cars. Why should we need the cars, right? So it's a revolution. I think that most of the features that we are working on improving the quality of life, and people can automate processes and focus in their in their family, and instead of doing some complicated task, they can focus their time on innovation, or play football or soccer, whatever they want, and makes our life easier to some extent.
Yeah. And we believe collectively that vector search is going to help there. I really like also to, of course, ask this more philosophical question. But before that, I was thinking, like, what do you think on the field in general, the vector search, and maybe including search and machine learning? A lot is happening, but what do you think is still missing from your perspective? Something that maybe we need to fix to be more efficient.
I think it's education, simplifying the concept of search. I think this is should be our main focus. So education, generating content, and again, I really like the grandmother test. Simplifying, not like super complicated mathematical equations, etc. Trying to simplify it and to explain it to your grandmother. And so I think it's education. We are, the ecosystem is trying to generate high quality content, videos, YouTube, blog posts. We are trying to contribute to this effort as well. I don't think we are doing enough, and it can be like high school or universities. So, but again, vector search is technology. It's an enabler. It's not the objective. It's not the target. But in order to unlock the potential of vector search and machine learning and transformers and all of these cool stuff, we should invest some of our resources in education and learning and training, and unlock the potential that every developer can build a vector search based application in every field. Like it can be, as I mentioned before, healthcare, fintech, education, and any other domain, that manufacturing or any other domain that he would like, that he is eager to solve some problem. I think we should simplify it, similar to the revolution of auto ML. So instead of processing and labeling images, etc., you have like an auto ML tool or solution, and you provision the data, labeling it, and then under the hood, the auto ML model will run the experiments, find the right algorithm, find the right hyperparameters, optimizing them. You can define what is the KPI that you would like to optimize. If it's F1 score or recall or whatever, and then you will get the model. And if you would like to deep dive, you will get the code. So generating models with low code. So this is another area that we should focus in. But to some extent, I believe that education, training, and generating high quality content should be our focus right now.
Yeah, I think you put it really well. And I would probably even add to this that, yes, there is content which kind of like promotes someone's solution, right? But at the same time, you really want to educate, like, why should people even care about your solution? So you need to take a few steps back and explain, what are we talking about? What problems exist that you are targeting, right? So I still, if I was asking the same question to myself, I still see a lot of content which is much more promotional than it should be, because in the beginning of this revolution, you still need to explain what is happening, what the hell is going on. Why? Because the reaction could be also from the incumbent players, that they will say, no, this is not where things are going, and they will go back to their clients and say the same. But like, you should not position it that way. You should explain, as you said, like, start from the problem, right? Start from what is your actual business and product target. And I guess this is not something that many engineers asking themselves. Some of the best that I know do. Some of the best data scientists do as well. They don't code before they understood what is being asked of them. And I think it's an amazing skill. And this is exactly where education also helps. Like, why should also data scientists or engineers care about this new field?
Yeah, this is super important. And we should and I'm saying again, internally, we should improve the quality of the content, and not trying to sell our solution just to explain. For a software developer without a background in machine learning, and to simplify it for him, and to explain what is the concept, what is the trade-off between the concept, and again, to give him the option to understand what is happening, and he should decide what is the best tool for him. Is it a screwdriver? Is it an hammer? He will understand the bits and bytes, but and the trade-off, and give him the full picture about what are the pros and cons of every solution, and he will take the decision.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if we educate more, some of the players doing a really great job there. And I'm looking forward also to see some blog posts. You already mentioned the notebooks that you guys are publishing on your website, and I believe that was Searchium website, right? And looking forward for more content there. That I think now that I learned that you really care about this topic, I think it's important to create and share and maybe educate the educators and give the example. So I think this is really great.
Yeah. One example, a great blog post that one of our software developer wrote is how to optimize OpenSearch workloads. So again, it's not, we have a plugin on top of it, but he wrote about what are the options without, writing about our solution and what are the options, how customers can optimize it. And another interesting blog post that we will publish soon is benchmarking. One of the things that we should improve in our ecosystem is to decide on a standard tool that will help us to decide what is the KPI and the benchmark. There are various benchmark over there. We are familiar with Rally, the Elastic benchmark. I haven't seen like a good benchmark industry standard in the vector search. There was the challenge of Big ANN 1 year ago or 2 years ago. But again, I don't think we have a good tool today. But so one of our developers wrote out to run the benchmark tool. So it was like OpenSearch benchmark, how to use this benchmark and what is the bits and bytes and tips, how to understand the benchmark tool. So yeah, I think that starting from the education and then offering customers to check your solution.
Yeah, sounds great. I think maybe even by the time this podcast is published, we have that new blog as well. Hey, Yaniv, I'm really excited to be chatting to you today. I mean, we touched a lot of deep topics. I'm sure we could have gone for longer. But I was also really curious to ask you this magical why question. The same way as you said, don't think about software, think about the problem that you're solving. The reason I'm asking why question is because I truly believe if you don't understand why you do things, then you're kind of like flying through things, right? So you might as well regret sometime later. Maybe you train the muscle, but still, I don't think it's a good, sensible approach in your life. So I'm really interested, given all your experience in machine learning and product management, software development, why are you excited to work on vector search, whatever is it that you do day to day?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I really like the Y Combinator accelerator approach for building product. Build something that customers like or love. And essentially, we are trying to build some cool stuff and make people's life easier, happier. I gave the example of the girl from Asia. So this is I think one of our mission, but it's not only the girl from Asia that would like to purchase a red short sleeve dress. It's the DevOps that is trying to find the right log, and instead of working it for hours, it will take him seconds. Okay, so essentially our mission, and I'm excited that I'm working on this topic. It's to make the consumers, businesses, and enterprises' life easier. So I think it's a very simple statement of the why, and I believe that this is my mission, or this is our mission. And to some extent, I think that this is like a doing good perspective. So you have like gambling companies building some stuff and building applications, and my approach is building things that will help the humanity. So I'm excited that this is the things that I'm working on. And by the way, and this was in my previous startup when we tried to save life, right? Drowning detection, huge issue, residential pool, open water. and save life. And if we can save life, maybe for health applications, detecting cancer with image embeddings or some other cool stuff, I'm super excited that this is the domain that we are working on.
Yeah, this is very relatable, and this fantastic that you're bringing this up. How we can actually improve life beside building great products or products that sell. This is amazing. And to conclude, is there any announcement that you want to make from your side or from Searchium AI side?
Yeah. So I'm very excited because we are building some cool stuff. So the first one, we launch our Searchium AI platform, where we offer customers a free tier to check our platform. And again, it's not fully working. We are not supporting all of the features, but this is very important. It is very important for us to get your feedback. So I encourage you to check it and to send me an email or send my team an email or in our support. Give your feedback. Don't be gentle with us. We are trying, to build things that developers would like, and we are very focused on the customer. So this is the first announcement, and every feedback is valuable. Next year, we will launch our second generation, where we can offer better performance, more than 10x. We have a few new implementations and in terms of performance, and hopefully at the beginning of 2023 we will release our Python compiler and some other cool stuff. So we are working on a few vectors, if I may use vectors, and on the software, on the hardware, on the system, user experience, and the user interface, and to simplify it. So this is the things that we are working right now, and we will be happy to be in touch with you.
Sounds great. Thanks, Yaniv. Looks like your plate is full of really exciting things. So all the best to you and your team. I know some of them. It's amazing that you guys are building this, and I'm really looking forward to Gen 2 of the APU hardware as well. And all the best. We will stay in touch. Thank you very much for this episode.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dimitri. It was a pleasure talking with you. Super interesting stuff. I can talk for hours about this domain. It's I'm excited to work in this domain, and really looking forward to hear from the community.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Yaniv.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.